It is April the 14th, 2025, and this is a momentous day in history. There are few that rival it in terms of anniversaries of arrogance, stupidity, and greed coming to meet in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, over which I will be flying later this evening, proximate to the time of the sinking of the ship that they said God himself could not sink. Of course, I am thinking about Titanic. And as Donald Trump puts the American ship of state full steam ahead into the ice, it seems we should remember what happened on that icy night 113 years ago this evening. There is always a high cost for highest levels of stupidity, mixed with misjudgment, mixed with greed, that are all then celebrated as virtues, when in fact, they're the recipe for catastrophe. This is the warning. People all over the world, including in the United States, including people I met in Oklahoma this weekend, they're all asking the same question. What's happening and why is it happening? Well, let me start by showing you a landslide, an avalanche. When an avalanche starts, gravity does most of the work. However it begins, and it doesn't take a lot, once that sheet of ice and snow and rock starts to come down, there's nothing to stop it except at the bottom. And what starts at the top, like a trickle, can become incredibly destructive. So Donald Trump has set things in motion that will be incredibly destructive for American power, American prestige, and for our allies' trust. The United States has broke trust with our friends. We have broken trust with our ideals, with our ideas, with our values, because for a time now, the government of the people, by the people, for the people has been hijacked by Donald Trump and his gangsters who serve their self-interest, who serve their greed, who serve the cause of their own power, but never you, ever. They are con men and they are stealing from you. They are stealing things from you that are beyond my ability to describe with regard to how priceless they are, how ephemeral. We'll talk about it in the months ahead. But for now, let's look at where Donald Trump is. Let's understand the Trump cycle. Because first, there is the threat and the bluster. There is the corresponding chaos. There is fear. There is reaction. And all of Trump's children, all of his little girls, and all of his little boys in their dressed up costumes and in their suits go on television and look in the camera and they lie and they say that Donald Trump knows what he's doing. He has a plan and he'll never back down.
I think that what you have assembled in your vision is a turning point and an inflection point in American history. And so just being a part of that is the greatest honor. So thank you for that. And again, just the relationships here and the honor and respect we have for each other is a reflection of you and your leadership.
But then the reactions come. Reality comes. A Canadian prime minister speaks.
Canada must be looking elsewhere to expand our trade, to build our economy, and to protect our sovereignty. Canada is ready to take a leadership role in building a coalition of like-minded countries who share our values.
And then there is the Trump panic. There is Trump incoherence. And all the king's men and all the king's ladies couldn't put Humpty Dumpty's tariffs back together again. He has fallen from the wall and cracked open, a fool exposed. Understanding this tale takes an appreciation of an old Turkish proverb. It's about a clown who goes to a castle. Now, for the purposes of this story, the clown is Donald Trump, and he is a clown. He's always been a clown. And the American people, with 49.9% of the vote, of those who chose to vote, sent him a clown to a castle, our White House, where above the state fireplace is an inscription, a quote of John Adams that talks about in prayer that he hopes only good and honest men will live there. Obviously, we know today that someday a woman will live there as chief executive. But the key point is the honesty. A low and dishonest man lives there, a clown, a venomous one. And this venomous clown proves the proverb true. For it says, when a clown goes to a castle, he does not become a sultan, but rather the castle becomes a circus. And so it has. And now, of course, there is the Trump surrender, with the country inexorably headed to recession, trillions of dollars poorer, the economy destabilized, the dollar declining in value, and U.S. Treasuries in trouble. The cost of borrowing money to sustain America's massive debt is going to get a lot more expensive for the American people, who don't seem to appreciate that giving the middle finger to everyone all at once, everywhere, wasn't a smart thing to do, because they are our customers. They buy our debt. And the person who caused this crisis is simultaneously causing 5 other crises. There is the constitutional crisis, where people are being disappeared off of the streets, where Trump officials think they have the authority to defy federal court orders, where there are encroachments and infringements by the government on ideas and thinking and speech. In fact, the Trump regime was forced to retract their focus on stopping at the border poisonous ideas. I wonder if Donald and his fascist White House thinks that my understanding that they are fascists is a poisonous idea. I wonder if they would like to keep me out of the country. But instead, I will go to France. And in France, I will go to the grave of Lafayette and to the beaches in Normandy. And I will remember, and I will write, and I will think, and I will take you on the tour with me to do my best to recall some of the things that were our shared faith. Ideas about freedom, freedom of conscience and imagination, the liberty to do with our lives as we please in the pursuit of happiness, with regard to raising our families, with regard to living our lives, without the officious and high-handed Trumpian hand in our face, the finger of one of his spokespersons constantly jabbing forward into the air at us through our screens with their intemperate tones and their aggressive postures. What are we to do? First, all of this 2 years from now will be repudiated in a way that Donald Trump and his hijackers cannot imagine. Secondarily, the costs for the business leaders of the most powerful American corporations who have made their deal with the devil, the righteous might of the American people, will defenestrate and defang their empires with antitrust actions in the years ahead. They have gotten too big, too powerful, and too arrogant. But arrogance finds its way always to the bottom of the sea. And so it will be again for MAGA and all of the men who think they should be kings and we their serfs, who have made their move upon the greatest ideas ever set down on paper by the mind of man, the notion that we are all created equal. What Donald Trump has proposed is a reordering of the world. All we have to do is submit to the king, and with his pleasure, all the riches of the world may be ours if we get in line, if we bend the knee, if we lick the boot. But the American creed suggests the answer to this proposition must endure forever and be frozen in amber with just one word: never. Donald Trump is a national disgrace. He is an usurper of what Washington built and imagined into being with an act of astonishing humility what Abraham Lincoln preserved with an iron strength tempered by compassion and empathy and a deep hunger for reconciliation. America is a project of faith and the work of the faithful. It is the place redeemed by Martin Luther King and by the Civil Rights Movement, by John Lewis and the men and women on a bridge in Selma, Alabama in April of 1965. And so, as we begin another week of chaos in America, Donald Trump has demonstrated he's not strong, he's weak. He is ubiquitous, but ubiquity is not strength. It is simply the power over corporate media to maintain presence at all times. But that presence can be turned off. It's a mirage. It is a mirage as sure as is the Wizard of Oz's. It is a cloak meant to make a small man big. And trust me, Donald Trump is the smallest of men. And I know that because sometime this weekend, Carolyn Levitt huddled with Donald Trump and they worked on a most ludicrous of statements, which I will read for you now in conclusion as the warning. Because any president, any man with power who is so brittle, thin-skinned, abjectly unable to connect with another human being, but at 78, so delusional as to think that this statement won't be laughed at by the overwhelming majority of us. And we're not laughing with any of you people in the White House. We laugh at you because each of you is resplendently incompetent, weird, arrogant, and entitled. Stephen Miller, he's a freak show. And for all of you who do terrible things, there will be accountability. There always is. And tonight is a great anniversary to contemplate that. On this, the anniversary of the sinking of the ship that God himself could not sink. I read from the Trump Medical Report in conclusion. President Trump remains in excellent health, exhibiting robust cardiac, pulmonary, neurological, and general physical function. His active lifestyle continues to contribute significantly to his well-being. President Trump's days include participation in multiple meetings, public appearances, press availability, and frequent victories in golf events. President Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of the commander-in-chief and head of state, which of course you know, because we see it every day, is untrue. What we see is a weak man, an incoherent man, an illogical man, a man who has no impulse control, a man who lacks restraint, a man surrounded by weakness and sycophants, a man surrounded by people who have joined a cult of personality and have pissed all over their obligations to the country and called it patriotism with golden Trump pins upon their lapels. This is The Warning. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning. I invite you to join this community where I promise to be honest, blunt, and direct about what is happening in this country. America is in crisis. Follow and subscribe to this channel and on Substack. Thank you